In the last few weeks, we've heard from two Republican candidates for Congress in New Hampshire's 2nd District. And this morning, we have the incumbent, Congresswoman Annie Kuster, joining us for conversation. Congresswoman, thanks for being here.
Good morning, Adam. Wonderful to be with you.
And happy Thanksgiving weekend as well. Yeah. So you came out in favor of impeachment back in July on a completely different issue, the Russia investigation. And now we're much farther along on a different topic, this Ukraine issue between President Trump, Ukraine asking for this investigation of the Bidens. What's your read right now on what you've heard in committee so far? And have you heard enough evidence at this point to vote to impeach?
Well, Adam, thanks so much for that question. I came out for the impeachment inquiry because we were hearing from constituents all across my district that they wanted a public process. They wanted it to be open and transparent. And that's, I believe, what the House Intelligence Committee has done. Like other Americans, I was riveted by the testimony last week, Fiona Hill, and before that, Ambassador Yovanovitch, telling what is a basic story. There are a lot of characters, but the story remains the same. All of the evidence so far has been very consistent. The President of the United States soliciting help from a foreign country in digging up dirt, as we say, on his opponent, on his rival. And that is contrary to American law, but much more importantly, it's contrary to our security interests in the region, and it's continuing to interfere in our elections. We know that there was Russian interference in our 2016 election. Now the president is seeking a foreign country to interfere in our 2020 election. All important issues and all in the basis of the Constitution. You can go back 250 years, and there was a judge just this week that did exactly that to determine our Constitution, our republic, is not a monarchy. She wrote, the president are not kings. Presidents are not kings. And that's really what's at the crux of this investigation. And so what happens next is that the testimony goes in a report to the House Judiciary Committee. That'll be happening over the course of the holiday weekend. And then on the 4th of December, next Wednesday, there will be the first impeachment hearing in the House Judiciary Committee. And the good news is they're going to start with the law so that all of the American people can be in the same place, sort of our background civics on 250 years of what our Constitution means. And then we'll get a sense. I have not prejudged the evidence. I do find the witnesses to be credible. And most importantly, if the President of the United States has witnesses that have evidence that would be what we call exculpatory. If he has a different version of events, let those people testify. And right now, he's not letting those people testify. So you have people like the Chief of Staff, Mick Mulvaney, who's right at the heart of the story. Let him come to the Judiciary Committee and tell his story. But right now, the evidence is very consistent, including the President's own words on the phone call.
Among the public, it seems like a lot of people already have their minds made up one way or the other. And a lot of people see this as President Trump being President Trump. He's someone who crosses lines. He does things very differently from any other politician. I mean, motivations aside, it's just what he does. It's different. So what's the precedent, though, if Congress does not vote to impeach or the Senate does not vote to convict? Do you think this kind of behavior would become the norm, or is he just a singularity?
Well, Adam, this is my greatest concern. I think we need to preserve the republic, that we have certain rules and standards and protocols, and one of the most basic, again, going to the core of our defense, of our security, is not to have foreign governments deciding our elections. That's really what the Constitution was about. We didn't want England or France or some other country making these decisions as the very first American election of President George Washington was going on. And I still feel the same way 250 years later. I want American citizens to decide our election. And that's, you know, we're the first in the nation primary state. We take our presidential elections very seriously in New Hampshire. We work hard on this decision of who we want to lead our country. And I don't want that decision made by a foreign government.
Democrats say this is a purely political move in terms of Senate Republicans perhaps just not even judging the case. But what about taking the issue of Hunter Biden's conduct? While his dad is vice president, he's on the board of a company that does natural gas deals in Eastern Europe, which is huge in their geopolitics. Whether or not that deserves to be investigated, that's the kind of swampy behavior a lot of people don't like. As regular people just wouldn't get away with that. A lot of people point to the president's children as well, making money while they hold official White House capacity. Shouldn't Congress be doing something to limit the access of family members to be able to have this kind of business relationship with the world while they're still serving, or their family is serving?
And I want to be careful that issue about the Bidens has been investigated and that theory has been debunked. There was no untoward conduct. But listen, I'm with the premise of your question. I would vote to have no role. I think I take ethics rules very seriously. In the House, we have very serious ethics rules. I can remember my son working on one of my campaigns, and my team was adamant that he not be paid a dime. He was a volunteer, and I think that's the way it should be. So I agree with you in the premise of that question. I want to go back to what you said about the senators. I think that this is still evolving. I had lunch with a Republican senator just within the last week who's a friend of mine. I try to work across the aisle. We were talking about the opioid epidemic. But in the course of that conversation, he talked about a phone call that he had with the president that was the day that the president finally released the aid. I think we have senators that are much more involved on this issue. They care about Ukraine. John McCain was one of the leaders on this issue about Ukraine. We need to be reminded, Ukraine is the place where Russia has interfered in their country, actually invaded an area of their country called the Crimea. What the aid was about, it was military aid, Javelin missiles to protect this country of Ukraine, a fledgling democracy, against incursion by Russia. And that's sort of where East meets West. It's where the U.S. interests need to be protected. And the Republican and Democratic senators together care a great deal about that issue. So there's much more to come out. And the other thing, I can see this being a much more bipartisan process in the Senate. This vote was one of the most bipartisan, virtually unanimous in the House and the Senate to give Ukraine this military aid. And so when everyone was asking the question, July and August, and this senator said to me, I couldn't get an answer. Nobody would give me an answer. And I think there's much more to this story that will come out. And frankly, it may come out during the trial in the Senate because there's nothing to stop witnesses from being called in the Senate trial. And what's interesting is the presiding justice will be the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, John Roberts. And John Roberts can make an instant ruling. You don't have to wait for appeals courts. John Roberts can say this person needs to come in and testify.
Some Democrats see the 2020 election as the bigger goal here, even though the impeachment process is going on. Are we going to see you endorse at any point?
I'm expecting I will endorse, but I am in the shoes of a lot of New Hampshire voters that I talk with. It's a big field, but more importantly, it's a very talented field. I'm super proud of our Democratic bench, if you will. I think we're going to have a very strong presidential candidate, vice presidential candidate, and cabinet coming out of this. So I've campaigned with at least half of the candidates already. I find them to be very compelling. Some have positions that are different than mine. I represent a purple district, if you will. I represent Republicans, Democrats, independents, most not looking for a revolution, but looking for making sure that we provide access to affordable health care. They want to save our planet and have renewable, clean energy and reduce carbon pollution. They've got a lot of local issues that I'm trying to bring to the fore: the opioid epidemic, the PFAS contamination, and access to infrastructure in rural communities, healthcare, broadband communication. So I'm having a great time, as New Hampshire voters do, getting involved and giving our opinions. And at some point, I'll let you know. You'll be the first to know. How about that?
We would love that. That would be great. All right, Congresswoman Custer,
Thank you
unfortunately, we're
so
out of time.
much.
Happy Thanksgiving.